Hey everyone, it's Ben. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a nice weekend. Today's video is a retrospective, and it's regarding the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. I wanted to wait and do a retrospective. I realized as the new film Texas Chainsaw 3D was coming out that I hadn't done a retrospective video on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, and I thought what a better time to do it. But I wanted to wait until I saw the new film, and I saw it today, so it's fresh in my mind. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each film though as they came out. So I'm going to start with the 1974 classic by Tobe Hooper and go up until the new film that was just released a couple weeks ago by Lionsgate. So I hope everyone enjoys this retrospective and stay tuned. So Tobe Hooper would bring us the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974. He directed it as well as co-wrote it with Kim Hinkle. The stars of the film are Marilyn Burns as Sally. You had Alan Danziger as Jerry, Paul A. Parsons as Franklin, William Vale as Kirk, Terry McMinn as Pam, Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker, Jim Seadow as the old man, and Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. The basic plot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about 5 friends who are hunted down and terrorized by the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface and his family of grave-robbing cannibals. Growing up in the 80s, I was more familiar with Jason, Freddy, and Michael Myers. Did not know that much about Leatherface because it took them 12 years to make a sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I'll talk about later. But I was not a huge fan of Leatherface. I didn't know much about him. I don't even believe I saw the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre until I was in my 20s. I didn't see the sequel either until much later. I was interested in it because the origin story, or the true story of what inspired Tobe Hooper to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was the Ed Gein murders in Wisconsin, which were also the inspiration for Robert Bloch's novel Psycho, as well as the Buffalo Bill character from Silence of the Lambs. So I was interested. I knew that a lot of people really thought the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was one of the best horror films. Most of these people were a little bit older than me, growing up in the 80s. When I really got interested in seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a lot of people might laugh, is when I saw the movie Summer School that Mark Harmon was in, because there were 2 characters in it that were huge horror fans. This was before horror was what it is now, where everybody seems to be a horror fan in some regard, but back then there weren't a lot of movies that focused on fans of horror, and Chainsaw and Dave in the film Summer School, they loved that movie Chainsaw Massacre, and their enthusiasm for the film was what kind of made me a little bit interested in it, and seeing little clips of it in the movie was just great. So that's kind of what made me interested in seeing the film for the first time. I think Tobe Hooper did a tremendous job writing and directing this film. I also think there's some tremendous actors in this film. I think Marilyn Burns as Sally is great. Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker is just completely twisted and wonderful, and I love him for it. I also love Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. What more can you say about him? Just, first introduction to Leatherface, he's amazing in the film, but even with the mask on, you really get a sense of character. I mean, I think it's a true testament to Gunnar Hansen as an actor. You really see that there's a weird sentimental side to Leatherface in a couple scenes where you just see him contemplating what he's doing and things like that, and I think that's a real testament to Gunnar Hansen as an actor. I also think Jim Seadow as the old man was a real character in this, and he had very kind of like, you liked him at one point, and then you see the sadistic side of him, and I think he did that very well. I also think Paul A. Parsons as Franklin was very good in the film. Those are the ones that really stand out for me the most. I've really come to appreciate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it has tremendous performances, wonderful direction by Tobe Hooper. I love Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. I really think the film is just a tremendous achievement for when it came out, the money that went into it, and the fact that it stood the test of time and is still as popular. I think it's more popular now than it ever was back then in the 70s when it was released. Truly love this film. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Tobe Hooper would officially make a sequel to his masterpiece in 1986 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. The film would star Dennis Hopper as Lieutenant Lefty Enright, Caroline Williams as Vanita Stretch Bruck. You'd also have Jim Sedow returning. He was just referred to as the old man in the original film, but here his name is Drayton Sawyer. He's the cook. You have the wonderful Bill Moseley as Chop Top Sawyer. And then, of course, Bill Johnson as Leatherface Sawyer. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is not one of my favorites in the series. I appreciate that Tobe Hooper tried to make the tone a little bit different, but in going the route of a black comedy as opposed to a straightforward horror, I thought it was just kind of a little bit off in terms of what I expected from a sequel to the original. I still appreciate it, but it just wasn't a favorite of mine. And even upon repeat viewings, I don't love it as much as the original Chainsaw Massacre film. I did like the character of Lefty that Dennis Hopper played. I thought it was very good, and the fact that it was I'm not going to say who, people haven't seen it, but it was of relations to characters. He was a relation to characters in the first film and was seeking vengeance against the Sawyer family. I thought that was a really good plug for the film. I also liked Caroline Williams as Stretch. I thought she really was the heart of the film and really did a good job in terms of having to be frantic and also had a lot of character and just really did a good job in the film. It was great to see Jim Sedow come back as the cook. Always a fan. I also loved Bill Moseley as Chop Top. I think he, with the next to Stretch or Caroline Williams as Stretch, I think Bill Moseley's the best person in the film. Just awesome. Just did a great job with the role, really soaking up the kind of over the top, performance, and just really it was really disturbing, but also you couldn't take your eyes off of him. I mean, he did a great job. My problem with the film is I did not like Bill Johnson as Leatherface. I didn't like the way Leatherface was portrayed in this film. I just thought he was too goofy, and I just really could not. I appreciate it. I thought he looked cool. I liked that he was kind of. The costume was a little similar to the way he looked at the end of part 1, but I just didn't like the character. I thought he was too shrieky, and I just didn't really care for him or the performance by Bill Johnson. I just didn't think he held a candle at all to Gunnar Hansen's amazing portrayal as Leatherface in the original. It's just not a great film for me. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. Like, not horrible, but not great. I mean, it's one that I've watched a couple times on DVD, and still just doesn't hold a candle to the original for me. So yeah, I mean, great effort. I appreciate that they were trying to do something different, but just not one of my favorites. 1990 would bring us Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. The story deals with a pair of college students who are, they take the, sort of like they're driving coast to coast. They accidentally take a wrong turn down a deserted highway in Texas, and they are stalked by the cannibalistic Leatherface and the Sawyer clan. The film stars Kate Hodge as Michelle, Ken Faree as Benny, William Butler as Ryan, the great Viggo Mortensen as Eddie Tex Sawyer, and then R.A. Mihailoff as Leatherface. The film was written by David Shaw, and it was directed by Jeff Burr. Now, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I did enjoy more than Tobe Hooper's sequel to his original film. That being said, it's still not like my favorite in the series. I still think it's a decent film. I did like the portrayal of Leatherface in this film a lot better than I did in the sequel to Hooper's film. I also thought Viggo Mortensen did a great job in this film, but it was just there was nothing really too special about this film to me. I did like the gore; I thought the gore was great, but there wasn't anything really unique in this film that made it stand out from Hooper's original film. It was. I think the Leatherface was more badass. I think it actually the way that he was portrayed in this film was a big influence on how he looked and was portrayed in the Platinum Dunes films. But outside of that, I just thought the story was kind of there wasn't anything special about the story. I thought it was just a basic kind of stalking film. I didn't think any of the characters in the film were as interesting as the characters in the original film, Hooper's original film. So, I mean, it's a good film. It's one that I've watched a couple times since I bought it on DVD. I initially saw it when I was a young kid. It was actually one of the first. I saw this one, I believe, before I saw Chainsaw 2. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. Not my favorite in the series, but certainly I think it was a little bit of an improvement over the first sequel in the series. Now, 1994 would bring us the fourth sequel to the fourth film in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. It was called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. God awful film. It's a film I do not own. I don't plan on ever owning it. I don't plan on ever seeing it again. It's probably one of the worst films I've ever seen. I really think it says it was released in 1994, but if memory serves, they didn't actually release it on DVD until 1997-98 because Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger was like their first film. And once they had hit it big with him being in A Time to Kill and her being in Jerry Maguire, then they put it out to the public, sort of showcasing that they were both in this film. The film is horrible. They changed the last name of the family to Slaughter, which was horrible. Also, Leatherface's portrayal in The Next Generation is just laughably horrible. It's just he's very over the top. There's one scene where he's wearing like a full dress, makeup. I mean, it's just horrible. I don't say this about a lot of films, but this film was just really, really bad. And McConaughey and Renee Zellweger they were okay in it. I mean, it was their first film, so, give them a break. But the film is just piss poor. It's just horrible. And what the biggest shock of it is that Kim Henkel, who wrote the original film with Tobe Hooper, actually directed the film. That's even a bigger shock. And I don't know if they were trying to relaunch the series with this because Leatherface, it had been like a 4 or 5 year, it had been about a 4 or 5 year gap since Leatherface Chainsaw 3 had come out, and that film hadn't done particularly well at the box office. So I think they were trying to relaunch the series, but it's just horrible. This is all I'm going to say about this film. Just a terrible film in my opinion, and one I will never watch again.